we'll cross over that in the future. But
Please, yes.
yeah, today we're getting into focusing and motivating sales team to hit target and achieve strategic objectives. So we're going to be talking a lot today about gamification, which is why I've got this question up on the stream. So if you're not familiar with the concepts, gamification is essentially just a process of adding game mechanics into non-game environments. So in this case, we're talking about the sales environment, which is essentially why Outbound exists, right? Like we're gamifying the sales
100%.
environment.
Yeah.
The goal of gamification is to engage sales staff to collaborate, to share ideas, and to motivate one another. And it's particularly effective in modern sort of hybrid working environments where you've got sales people potentially around the country or not working in the same location, but equally as effective in the traditional sales floor on a dashboard. Now, the word game in a professional environment might seem childish to some, but I just want to, we touched on this before, but I want to draw your attention to the fact that games, especially mobile games, have become prolific over the last decade. So it doesn't matter what age you are. I'm sure you're familiar with probably games like Candy Crush, Words with Friends, Wordscape. Essentially what I'm saying is that games have proliferated through the generations at this point. But something that I want to make really clear, and this will be bleedingly obvious if you've got a teenager, is that games have been entrenched in the way that young people communicate with one another. And as Gen Z start entering the workforce, I mean, millennials, I think we're well past 50% now in Australia of millennials in the workforce. But as Gen Z start entering the workforce, it's going to be things like gamification that we're going to be able to implement to break down those generational barriers within the workforce, share knowledge internally, encourage productivity, and achieve business outcomes. So for the purpose of today, we're going to define what it means to achieve a business outcome into three parts. First part is the business objective, which is the overall focus, what we're working towards. The second part is the sales activity. So that's the sales activity that goes into actually achieving that, whether that be like prioritizing a certain activity that we want executed, what the communication mix is, because now we're communicating across multiple platforms, whether that be video, telephone, email, and how we're actually going to motivate and encourage participation in those sales activities. And the third part is team alignment, which is transparency. So among teams and staff members, how are we going to track our progress towards the overall business goals when we are communicating through so many different funnels? So with that understanding of the background of gamification, we're going to go through how to focus and motivate sales teams. And at this point, it's also worth mentioning that anybody that's attending the event today will get an invitation to Blitzapalooza. So we'll do a demo at the end. But essentially, sure, Blitzapalooza is your opportunity to jump straight in and test out gamification for yourself. It's a sales event that could reward you with up to $1,000 cash just for doing your normal sales
everyday
activity.
Job.
Like, how good is that? So just jump on, have some fun with a whole bunch of other sales professionals doing, outbound calling, all that kind of stuff. And essentially, like, it's, this could be your offer. You could walk away with $1,000 cash and set up your pipeline all the way through December so that you got Christmas nice and rested Christmas, knowing that you put in the hard yards.
100%.
So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Mitch to talk about gamification's role in the traditional sales environment, calling, emailing, etc. And then I'm going to take you through some examples of how I'm using Outbound to reinforce my training and encourage ongoing participation in new sales activity in the world of social selling. So that's all LinkedIn and stuff. But anyway, without further ado, over to you, Mitch.
Legend. Thank you for the intro, Brad. I really appreciate it, mate. Before I get stuck in, are you a Candy Crush guy?
I think I got up to like level 500 and something and then realized I needed to give up. That was years
Yeah.
of work.
Yeah, it is years of work. No, I'm a big Candy Crush on the playing guy. So my I think I got to like, I don't know, I think I was like 980 or something levels, like deep in, and then I changed phones, all disappeared. Couldn't transfer it over, and I was just like, you know what? Maybe that's a sign. Maybe it's a sign for me to take my gamification away from my crushing little lollies into maybe some sales. So cool. All right. So with that in mind, I mean, you touched on a number of things there, Brad. I think the biggest things that I've seen come out of gamification. So I was new to Brad and I were talking just before we jumped on. I was new to gamification, really, in particular in the professional world. Obviously, we chatted Candy Crush just then, but in the professional world, I was completely new to gamification up until I started with Outbound. And pretty quickly, it was evident to me that, I've never really been a creative guy when it comes to, in particular, when it comes to work. I've always just sort of got in, done the job, never really been too creative with how I go outbound and do my calls and emails and things like that. And really quickly, gamification changed that for me and made me a lot more creative than I ever really thought. And the way that it did that is, I think, firstly, it gives us it just gives us a lot better visibility when it comes to what your targets are each week or each month or each day. And I'll do a bit of a demonstration, of course, with our outbound platform. I'll show you exactly how that looks. But one thing that I thought it did wonders for me was it helped me track my outbound ability, my outbound numbers. And so, for example, a lot of people, especially in sales, they'll have to do 50 connected calls a week, 100 connected calls a week, rah, rah. So many people are just doing that with a pen and paper, crossing them off a little, like just going through the motions. And you'll get to the end of the week and go, oh, I got to 42 calls. Cool. Like, pretty good. It's 3 o'clock on a Friday. I'm not doing any more calls. Whereas one thing that our platform has done is it obviously gamifies and incentivizes that, and you can see it. But in the platform, we actually have bonuses once you hit those targets. And so, to take it back a little bit to how Outbound actually came about, Steve and Darcy, the co-founders of the product, they thought about it and they thought, gee, we've been sales consultants, we've been motivating sales teams for a really long time. Where is the one place in the world that motivation isn't really ever an issue? And they both thought, well, the arcade is always a good little motivator. You shoot some basketball hoops, you get your tickets, you go cash in, and you get your prize. And a lot of the time, those prizes are, they range from a little keychain to, a PS5 potentially, depending on which arcade you're going to, I guess. But it's all, it's all about you have to do the work to get that reward, and it's repetition and all of those things. And so they figured, how could we do that when it comes to a platform online that we can work with all of the teams that we work with around the world? And I think that's probably the second most important part of the platform and of gamification, especially as we move to more of an online world. And that's the fact that myself, I'm in Brisbane, Steve, who I work with, is in Toowoomba, and Darcy's at the Sunshine Coast. And we all work and we have complete visibility on what everyone is doing, where our numbers are on all times throughout the entire week. And we can see that through our dashboard. We're all in the same game. And so not only can we see it, but if a good example is Darcy and Steve, obviously they've been in the game a little bit longer than me. They were beating me over for lifetime coins for obviously the entirety of my employment here. And I was getting really, really close to just jumping over them. And then, of course, we hit a massive target this month. So their coins jumps like 100,000 coins ahead of me. And so just as I was catching up to them, they're now way off in the distance again. But it's one of those things that, we didn't even have to communicate for me to tell them. I actually told them yesterday that I specifically, was, I guess, in secret catching them the whole time because I wanted to get ahead of them before they even realized that I was even close. But it's not meant to be. So that's just a little part of it, I suppose. What I might do, I think this would be best sort of done with the demo.
Yeah, I think so too. So let's jump in and show you what it's all about, because as we said, it's about transparency, it's about team alignment, it's about motivating sales teams to essentially compete for the right at the end of the week to say I've done the most sales activity. And then, if I know for a lot of people out there that I've invited on here, you might not necessarily be doing sales activity day in, day out. So once we show you this platform, I'm going to show you some more creative ways that we can get the entire team involved. Take it away, Mitch.
Awesome.
I need to add you to the stage. There we go.
Oh, sweet.
Bingo.
Good timing too. All right, awesome. So what you guys will see here is if I just look. So I'm actually just going to jump into my own game, for example, and give you a bit of an idea. As you can see, obviously, here's the dashboard. This is what I meant before about very clear visibility. So as you can see, I've got all my KPIs for the week in here. Fortunately, I'm having a bit of a good week. So it's a good week to share my own personal game, I guess. But you'll see here, like these are my KPIs every week, and everyone's obviously got KPIs. They're all different. Mine are pretty specific to our business and what we do. But these are the KPIs. What you'll see here is a little tracker, and that essentially tracks where I should be for the week. So as you can see here, although these ones look nice and pretty and they're well and truly ahead, this one here is looking pretty dismal. And so it tells me exactly how far behind I am throughout the week and as we go along. And so what happens is I'll show you how to add an action. So if I was to add an action, let's just say an intro message. I can come in here, I'll type in 5 times intro messages, because those are things that you could send, quite a number of quite frequently. Jump in here, do times 5, submit, and then all of a sudden that's now added to my weekly tally. Now these are obviously all completed tasks, but as you can see here, I've got extra coins at the end of my KPIs. So extra incentive for me to hit the target, because what happens then is if I don't get to the very end of my thermometer, I don't get these extra bonus coins. I get coins along the way for every activity, but I don't get these extra bonus coins. Now for me,
just to clarify, Mitch. So what's happening with those those coins is your Outbound has actually set up some sort of incentive so that you can redeem those coins. Is that right?
Correct. And for me, mine are a little bit, I guess you could say, boring in comparison to some of our other customers. So my coins basically translate to dollars at the end of the day. So mine's a 1 to 100 ratio. So mine, like I said, mine are a little bit boring because I'm a BDM and it's my job. All of my coins essentially translate into dollars provided to me in like a bonus. Whereas we've seen some really cool reward strategies before. So we've seen people that, have had half day Fridays as part of their rewards, or depending on how long or how many actions they need to do. We've had people that have had like overseas holiday vouchers or RM Williams boots. So one thing that's quite cool about it, I believe, is that it's one of those things that you can really tailor to each person and really motivate people, because not everyone's motivated by money at the end of the day. Like, some people are motivated by more time at home, more time off. Sometimes they're motivated by a free lunch. So it really, like, it's one of those things that you can really get to know your team, know what makes them tick, and I guess reward them accordingly. So it's another little incentive like that, I suppose. But that's essentially how it works. One other thing I will show is we've recently just integrated natively into HubSpot. And I'll give you a quick demonstration on how that would work for anyone that is with HubSpot or another CRM. What we do is I've just picked another one of my activities that connects in here to HubSpot. I can go through, for example, Brad, I know you're in here. I've got you in here. I can write a note, meeting with Brad. And then that will, upon me submitting, that will then go into your file there on our HubSpot. So then everything is tracked. It saves any double handling when it comes to the CRM, and everything is tracked straight into our CRM system, which is really the whole point at the end of the day, is so you guys are entering stuff into there while also rewarding yourselves.
So one thing that I want to mention is that the thing that I love about this is that at the end of the day, sales comes down to activity. So you can start shifting the conversation away from, incentivizing, you're only going to get a commission if you hit your number, and actually start really adding, measuring your activity and incentivizing, albeit smaller, but incentivizing activity, which will then essentially get your help you reach sales targets. And that's going to give you more insights into what kind of activity you've actually done, and what's working, what's not. Like, that's real oversight. Hey, one thing, Mitch, before you
Sure.
could you share that
I can
screen
bring it
again?
back up. Sure
One
can.
thing that I do want to show, I'm not sure if you're using it,
Sure.
but in terms of team collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
if you could show the social feed as well, because
Yeah, we do.
it's a great internal tool. I'll add you
For
up. It's a
sure.
great internal tool to um, essentially breed collaboration between
Yep.
your external members.
Yep.
So
It's
you've got a full social feed that you can use internally.
Yeah, and one thing that we've actually implemented it's probably one of my favorite parts of the game at the moment. It's actually got nothing to do with sales at all. As I mentioned earlier, because we have a very remote team. So Darcy, he's at the sunny coast. I'm here in Brizzy. Julia's actually here in Brizzy, which is cool. Brad is in Switzerland,
Mm,
and Steve's in Toowoomba. And so what's awesome about it is we've implemented what we call the culture game. And basically what that is it encourages us, like one of our parts of our culture game is to have a weekly one-on-one with part of the team. And ever since we've implemented that, I feel like, we've obviously gotten to know each other a lot better, but there's nothing's getting missed on our end anymore either, which is great. Like it's easy when everyone works in different corners of the world for things to, get swept under the rug or things like that. But that's certainly not happening anymore. And then other things that are being encouraged is exercise. So part of the culture game is exercise, and everyone posts in here, with a hashtag. So I've just been adding it into the game recently, but if I came in here and went hashtag sweat, which I actually need to do because I trained this morning, on by chest session, for example, that will then add to my culture game. And it's just I don't know. It's a
yeah,
really cool. I'm really glad you brought that up, Brad, because it is actually
yeah,
a really cool part of the platform itself.
awesome. So I just conscious of time. What I'm going
Sure.
to do is boot you off, and I want
Go
to
on.
talk about sales training and how I'm deploying this with sales training. So when I approach sales training, I essentially go to market strategy. I need to address the business problem. So whether that's sales ops, team alignment, market presence, then I need to address the gaps in knowledge and skill sets of the sales team, or the people that are participating, and then I need to reinforce that with engagement and encouragement of participation. So, to give you an example, and I'm conscious of time, but this is a technology integration company. Their business problems were establishing internal documentation. Essentially, what they had a service team out on the field, and they weren't taking good photographic documentation. So essentially, it couldn't be repurposed for content or any sort of other sales collateral. The second one was overcoming gatekeepers. In this case, it was the education market, um, and so that was involved me training the salesperson about how to come up with a strategy about how we attacked. Or I shouldn't say attack, but essentially got in front of those decision makers. And the third one was challenges in messaging continuity across the teams. So the sales person was delivering one message, and the service team was delivering another message. So essentially, what we came up with was 3 sets of training. One of the trainings was showing the service team how to take a photo that was going to be good enough for content, so lighting and all that kind of stuff. We then got them to upload that to the CRM, which then integrated with Outbound, which then essentially incentivized the service team to take good photos. Then using those sales collateral photos, we then got the sales member to use that collateral for content on the platform, so that we were targeting education decision makers that was beyond just content, but also communications. And we set up targets within the Outbound game to do that. And then we set up an engagement training. So from the service guy's perspective, essentially what we did was we taught them how to jump on LinkedIn, consume a message, comments, what was appropriate, so that the service guys were consuming the sales message and via osmosis going out there with an aligned communication structure. The second scenario is a technology. What have I done there? Hang on. The second scenario was manufacturing products, selling via distribution company. So they didn't have a marketing team, so they had no active market presence. The sales team were not collaborating due to interstate locations, and there was a lack of end user feedback, right? So essentially, in this scenario, using Outbound, we came up with, I delivered the training, and we came up with incentives to show them how to create content that was specific to their industry and what they wanted, the message that they wanted to portray. That was targeted, and they were motivated to do it using Outbound. They were collaborating using the social feed. And then we set up some targets about what we wanted to actually achieve in terms of a strategy around engaging end users to feed back into another resource that we were developing. So it was a larger strategic objective. But there's some of the sort of ways that we can use gamification to really branch out. And if I can sort of paint a picture and bring it back to where we started. But actually, I'll present that again. So what we were talking about was, we'll pop it up. What we were talking about, if you remember back, was the business objectives, the focus, sales activity, and team alignment. So it really paints a really nice picture about week to week, we can change what the business objectives are, motivate different types of sales activity to achieve those objectives, and have visibility and transparency to promote team alignment across multiple channels, whether or not they're playing the game or not. You know, marketing might want to see what kind of activity we're doing, or they might want input into some sort of activity that they put a resource together and they want sales to follow through on that. So business objectives, focus, sales activity, the motivation piece, and team alignment, the transparency piece. And hopefully that brings this gamification question full circle, and you can see the benefit of it. So we've got
absolutely
about a minute left. Don't know if anybody had any questions.